everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday edition of the PT on Ice Daily Show. I am Christina Previtt. I am one of the two lead faculty in the modern management of the older adult division. I co-lead with Dustin Jones, and we just actually finished up our summer online cohort for the modern management course, which was super fun. It was a really engaging course. It can sometimes be really tough to do an online course and keep yourself on track in the summer when it's beautiful outside and there's barbecues and patios and stuff to go to. So our cohort did amazing about staying accountable and staying, in it for the long haul for the 8 weeks. We have a little bit of a break, and then we start our next online cohort on the 22nd of September. Dustin and I are actually working on a fairly big revamp of some of the material to update the course material based on the literature that's come out, which is super exciting. So if you guys are looking to jump on, try and do that early because these courses always fill up, which is awesome. All right, so this past weekend was the 2019 CrossFit Games in Madison, Wisconsin. And so I thought that this was a good time to be talking a little bit about some of the changes that have been happening in CrossFit. And some of the response from clinicians who work with the geriatric populations in response to those changes. So if you guys have been following CrossFit for a while, you realize that in the beginning of the year, they did a huge revamp where they took the onus of their social media presence away from the competitors, not that completely away, but definitely changed the ratios of the amount of material that was covered by their high-level competitors, and they launched a new website and really shifted gears into something called CrossFit Health. And in this way, they're tackling a lot of population health initiatives, including combating chronic disease, and they took a big interest in some of the geriatric population type of stuff. So I'm going to ignore the fact that a lot of their videos were slightly ageist and that they assumed that everybody who was over the age of 70 would have the wood paneling and the shag carpets and the floral print sofas. But they actually really started to highlight the ways that we could scale some of the exercises in CrossFit and make it appropriate for a geriatric population. And one of our favorite quotes from Greg Glassman is that the demands of an Olympic level athlete and a grandma are differences of degree, not kind. So in that way, saying that we don't have to have a completely different exercise program for somebody who is older. So an acumen that, Dustin and I really prescribe to, but we just have to scale and modify based on ability levels. So when this started happening, there started to be big discussions in the Geros groups for Geri PT clinicians. I saw it all over social media about, is this a good thing? Are fitness professionals encroaching on the toes of PTs? What should PTs do about it, et cetera? And I think what this came down to was the notion of do no harm. Because what we know with an older population, that there is increased risk for multimorbidity, polypharmacy, falls risk, all of these things that could potentially place an older adult at risk for injury, illness, exacerbation of a condition, et cetera. But I was looking over some of the clinical practice guidelines, and I feel like sometimes we just need to get people moving. So something is better than nothing. And so the question becomes, are we really putting people at risk if they're going into CrossFit gyms, older adults, instead of going to geriatric physical therapists and working with them on exercise prescription? So there's a couple of things that I'm thinking about when it comes to this question. One is the do no harm. And, if we are doing appropriate consultations with individuals who are going into group exercise programs, if they are doing proper medical screening or they've had physician referral into an exercise program, I actually don't really see a problem with individuals continuing to be active wherever they feel comfortable. I think it is a testament to the person's thought process in trying to drive change for their health to walk into a CrossFit gym in their 60s and 70s and ask to be part of the group or to do personal training with an individual in that group. The CrossFit gyms, not always, but can be extremely intimidating. And so to have somebody come in, I would want to be encouraging them to try and, make changes to their health, whatever that may look like. The second thing is that there's more CrossFit gyms who are starting to offer programming for older adults. And so they are doing certifications. They are starting to do a lot of research on scaling options. And they're providing a space where individuals can get healthy. If you think about the cost to somebody who is joining one of these groups, you're probably thinking in the $130 to $200 US per month range to join a CrossFit gym. That in comparison to some of the costs, for example, cash-based physiotherapy, it may not be financially feasible for older adults to be accessing our services on an ongoing basis in order for us to be the ones involved in their exercise prescription. The third thing that I think about is, when does physical therapy start and end? If you've seen me speaking about health and wellness and how physical therapists can get involved, the harder part with working with an older adult population is that you're already usually in the realm of secondary prevention. So risk factors have already started to develop, or you're already in the realm of tertiary prevention where there's a chronic condition that is present and we're trying to avoid any exacerbations. So the idea around where physical therapy would start and end would be a little bit more elusive and gray. But usually what we're trying to do with our older clients is to be transitioning them away from needing our one-on-one care to a self-management type of paradigm. So what that can mean for geriatric populations is that we are working with people for an episode of care or a course of care, and then we are liaising with our different fitness facilities across the space that we are occupying within our center of influence, and allowing them and potentially going in and helping the members or coaches of a CrossFit gym that are trying to get their older clients, healthy and happy and strong. How can we liaise appropriately between when we think that there's enough confidence in movements and skill in different motor patterns for us to be able to transition them into a more maintenance type of program, and that may be a little bit more financially feasible. And so the question about whether or not this is going to cause harm, I think is missing the boat a little bit. Because if you look at the way that our healthcare system is set up, if you are in a long-term care or an assisted living facility, so you're having individuals who are fairly sick, usually a laundry list of chronic conditions that are associated with a bunch of medications, who is running the exercise programs there? Most of the time it is not the physical therapist. The physical therapist will come in and apply an exercise session, but it's usually the activity director who is doing the falls prevention classes, who are running the dance groups, who are doing all these things, and it's the physical therapist who is trying to liaise with the activity director in order to increase the amount of activity that the individuals in those assisted living facilities and nursing care homes are doing. So it's not necessarily that the PT is the one who is doing the exercise programs day in and day out. In Canada, our hospital system is set up so that there is more intensive therapy one-on-one, especially if people are in, for example, inpatient rehab, but it is the kinesiologist who is doing the exercise programs that, again, are more of those maintenance phases. So how is that setup different than having an outpatient PT work with the person who's over 65 to get them to a certain level of function, and then allowing these fitness facilities who have an interest in working with older adults to start doing more of the maintenance piece? One of the things that I think would be great for us to do is, if you have an individual coach, for example, in your area who wants to start a program for older adults, teach them. So go in and do a couple of workshops to make sure that you and that team are on the same page. And if that is true and you trust in the skill set of those coaches who are running these programs, then you should have no problem with that referral once you feel like you are completely comfortable with their level of function so that they can transition into more of a maintenance phase. When we look at some of the exercise prescription guidelines for individuals with different chronic conditions, so multimorbidity, diabetes, stroke, healthy older adult populations, what we're seeing is that they're pretty much the same. You're going to see 75 minutes of vigorous physical activity or 150 minutes of moderate physical activity aerobically a week, 2 times a week, at least 2 to 3 times a week of resistance training targeting major muscle groups over 80% of 1 rep max. Between 8 and 12 reps you should be able to complete at that prescribed weight. Balance training if indicated based on risk factors or previous history of recurrent falls. So if you look at those guidelines, you should feel confident that there are fitness professionals that are going to be capable of fulfilling those guidelines and helping you with those programs. So the final thing that I wanted to mention in terms of encroaching on people's space, during the final lecture of the Modern Management of the Older Adult course, we talk about being advocates for older adults. And sometimes that means that we are, trying to get involved in these programs. If you guys know about Stave Off's business model, I do supervise an older adult specific class where I have individuals, especially with arthritis, that are trying to prevent or improve outcomes post joint replacement. And so I am in an ideal setting, but I do not feel like people are stealing business from me if I have an individual who finishes their course of care and then instead of transitioning into our group classes decides to go to a different gym facility or see a personal trainer. In Canada, we have an aging population, which is the same in the US. We have an increasing amount of time spent being sedentary, a decreased amount of time being spent being active. And until my entire community is pain-free, is active, is eating well, is hydrating, is doing appropriate sleep hygiene activities, I don't feel like the person that is seeing the personal trainer is the person that should be seeing me. I'm asking myself as a clinician, how can I reach the people who haven't reached out to somebody in the fitness facility because of pain? How can I remove barriers for individuals who are in their 60s who might want to do CrossFit and they feel like their knees just can't handle it? Is there a way that I can help facilitate that transition so that they can be involved in an exercise program that they think that they're going to enjoy? And because they're going to enjoy it, they're going to continue participating in it long term. And they may be able to afford it a little bit more and it may be more financially accessible than, for example, trying to stay with one-on-one personal training or staying with one-on-one physical therapy, especially if you don't have the coverage. And we know that reimbursement rates for Medicare and Medicaid are starting to become increasingly more difficult, especially if maintenance or prevention are your aims. And so I thought that instead of trying to compete with different faculties and different ways of working with an older adult population, how can we liaise with them? So instead of saying that CrossFit is bad and seeing Jerry PT is good, saying how can we help the CrossFit gym that is trying to do a silver sneakers type of program in their CrossFit box? How can I feel comfortable referring to that facility? What do I feel like the coaches need to know? Can I provide a workshop for them? And then not only that, if you're in outpatient orthopedics, you actually may have a bilateral, it's not just you referring to the facility may now feel like you are on the same page as them and refer their clients, whether they're over 65 or otherwise, back to you because they don't think that they're going to be bringing a person to a physical therapist who's just going to be saying, that's not the most appropriate strategy for you to be able to maintain your physical activity and strength as you get older. So, the first thing, do no harm, and oftentimes moving is going to be better than not moving. What can we as fitness professionals do? What can we as physical therapists do? And how can we work together? And usually, just like we say of PT on Ice, it's and, not or. We do not have to be in the fitness professional camp or the PT camp. We can blend. We can have, if someone's working with a CrossFit gym and their knee is starting to hurt them, bring the referral over to PT, get them strong and feeling better and better able to manage their pain, and then bring them right back in so that you guys are working together. So our initiative for older adults is to make everybody more resilient, strong, and approaching end-of-life care in a way that is appropriate and is the way that they would like to approach that care within the constraints of, their health. All right, I hope you guys found that helpful. I think about this kind of stuff a lot around how we can work together to approach the healthy, active aging question. So if you guys have any questions or comments, ways that you have facilitated work with your local CrossFit box, whether you are the person who is running their Silver Sneakers type program, that is really cool as well. That's another really neat model. Put it in the comments below. I would love to hear your guys' opinion. This is a big topic of debate where some physical therapists believe that healthcare or fitness professionals are working outside of their scope of practice. But what can we say about how we can help them? Or, where do we draw a line between where it's probably more appropriate to see PT versus to see personal trainers, which can also be called PT. So I have to be watching my acronyms. Let's start a discussion about this because I think it's an important one. All right, have a very happy Wednesday. You guys are actually going to see me in 2 days. I'm going to be talking flipping hats and talking about the postpartum athlete on Friday. So I will see you guys in a couple of days. Bye now.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.